A feared crime boss stands by the swings. His little girl hasn't spoken since the night everything burned. A poor maid kneels, taps a simple rhythm and whispers, "Breathe with me." The girl says one tiny word, and the world stops. He offers safety. She steps into his guarded house, rules, cameras, locked gates, and a pull they're both trying to deny. But a dark sedan keeps showing up. A secret message dangles money to use the child. A strange tattoo points to the night of the fire, and inside his walls, someone is leaking every move. When enemies come for the girl, only the maid's voice can guide her through the fear, and the boss will burn the city to keep them alive. Who's the traitor hiding in his home? Why was the child targeted first? And when love becomes the only shield, will the maid save this family or break it forever? The late afternoon wind whips through the deserted playground, rustling dead leaves against the metal fence. Clara's worn shoes crunch on salt-crusted pavement as she walks, her shoulders hunched against the cold. The weight of exhaustion from her double shift drags at her limbs, but she can't shake the prickling awareness of being watched. The black sedan idles too perfectly, its tinted windows reflecting the weak winter sun. She forces herself not to stare, keeping her pace steady even as her heart quickens. Years of navigating tight spots have taught her when something feels wrong. This feels wrong. She clutches her thin jacket closer, the paper cup's lingering warmth a ghost against her palms, where she'd held it earlier. The memory of the little girl's face floats in her mind, those huge dark eyes finally focusing, small fingers uncurling from their death grip on the swing chains. That first raspy word had felt like a miracle. The sedan's engine purrs to life. Clara doesn't turn to look, but she's acutely aware of its slow roll forward, maintaining a careful distance. Her boarding house is 15 blocks away, through increasingly shadowy streets as the winter sun sinks lower. The metallic taste of fear coats her tongue. Behind the sedan, the sleek black SUV follows like a prowling cat. She remembers the way Massimo De Angelis had watched her, that unnervingly still focus, the way his entire body had oriented toward his daughter at that first whispered word. There had been something dangerous in his stillness, in the careful way his men moved around him. Clara takes measured breaths, fighting the urge to run. Running never helps. She learned that lesson young, when creditors would pound on their door and her mother would freeze like a rabbit, leaving Clara to handle things. Better to walk steady, to think clearly. She passes the closed shops of her neighborhood, their metal security gates already drawn down for the night. The few people still out hurry past with ducked heads and curved shoulders. No one makes eye contact. The street lamps flicker to life with audible clicks, casting pools of sickly orange light. The sedan maintains its distance, never falling too far behind or drawing too close. Professional. Deliberate. Clara's mind races through possibilities. Had she inadvertently witnessed something she shouldn't have? Was this about the girl speaking? Or was it simply bad luck? Being in the wrong place at the wrong time? She thinks of her brother Tommy, waiting in their tiny shared room, probably hungry and worried. She should have been home hours ago. The extra shift had seemed worth it this morning when the cafe owner had been desperate for coverage. Now she wishes she'd just gone straight home. The cold bites through her thin soles as she walks, each step measured and calm, despite her racing pulse. The tap-tap pause rhythm she'd used with Poppy plays in her head like a lifeline. She focuses on it, using it to steady her breathing the way she'd shown the little girl. Wind whistles between the buildings, carrying the first sting of approaching snow. Clara's fingers have gone numb, and she tucks them into her pockets, where her right hand finds the familiar shape of her apartment key. Its edges are sharp against her palm. A small comfort, but better than nothing. The sedan's headlights cut through the gathering dusk, casting her shadow long and dark against the crumbling brick walls. She can hear the low rumble of both vehicles' engines, a predatory harmony that makes her skin crawl. The SUV hangs back, almost invisible in the growing darkness, but she can feel its presence like a weight between her shoulder blades. A police siren wails in the distance, but it's moving away, fading into the city's constant background noise. Clara passes the corner bodega where she usually stops for Tommy's dinner. Closed now, its windows dark. 3 more blocks to home. She thinks again of Poppy's face, of the way tension had melted from her tiny frame as they breathed together, of Massimo's expression, shock bleeding into something raw and grateful that had made him look suddenly human. The memory steadies her somehow, even as the sedan's engine purrs closer. The boarding house's familiar stoop appears ahead, its paint peeling, security light flickering fitfully. Clara maintains her pace, though her legs want to sprint those final yards. Running shows fear. Fear makes you stupid. She'd learned that young, too, in the endless dance of avoiding bill collectors and angry landlords. Salt crunches under her feet as she approaches her building. The sedan slides past, smooth as silk, its driver's face a pale blur behind tinted glass. It doesn't stop, doesn't speed up, just continues down the street with deliberate purpose. The SUV follows at its measured distance, both vehicles disappearing around the corner like dark water flowing downhill. Clara stands at the bottom of her stoop, keys clutched in her pocket, watching until their taillights vanish completely. Only then does she allow herself to shake, just for a moment before squaring her shoulders and climbing the worn steps to her building's door. She has to try 3 times before the key slides home in the stubborn lock, her cold fingers clumsy with delayed adrenaline. The boarding house's ancient radiators clank and hiss as she finally steps inside, the familiar musty warmth wrapping around her like a blanket. She leans against the closed door, breathing in the scent of cabbage and curry that perpetually permeates the building. Somewhere above, a baby cries. A television blares through thin walls. Normal sounds, safe sounds. But as Clara climbs the creaking stairs to the room she shares with Tommy, she can't shake the feeling that something has shifted, that the simple act of helping a silent child find her voice has set larger wheels in motion. The sedan's smooth pursuit plays on repeat in her mind, along with the memory of Massimo DeAngelis's intent dark gaze. Clara's hair was still damp from her rushed shower as she stirred the sad-looking microwave dinner with a plastic fork. The boarding house's shared kitchen hummed with its usual evening activity. The microwave's tired whir, the clink of cheap utensils, the shuffle of tired feet on linoleum. She'd managed to snag 5 minutes in the communal bathroom between Mrs. Chen's lengthy beauty routine and Mr. Patterson's clockwork shower time. Tommy sat across from her at their tiny fold-out table, homework spread across one corner, careful not to let his textbook touch his plate of instant noodles. "You're later than usual," he said, not looking up from his math problems. "Extra shift." Clara didn't mention the playground, the silent child, or the cars that had followed her home. No need to worry him more than their usual concerns already did. "How was school?" Before Tommy could answer, 3 sharp knocks echoed through their thin door. Clara froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Nobody knocked at this hour. Not bill collectors, not neighbors asking to borrow sugar they couldn't spare. Tommy's eyes went wide, pencil stilling mid-equation. Clara approached the door cautiously, checking the peephole's clouded view. Her breath caught. Massimo DeAngelis stood in the narrow hallway, his expensive suit incongruous against the peeling floral wallpaper. A tall man in a tactical jacket, clearly security, flanked him, filling the cramped space with controlled vigilance. She opened the door, keeping the chain latched. "Mr. DeAngelis. Miss Voss." His voice was softer than she expected, almost gentle. "May we have 10 minutes of your time?" Clara glanced back at Tommy, who had half risen from his chair. "It's okay," she told him, though she wasn't entirely sure it was. She closed the door, removed the chain, and reopened it. Massimo gestured to his companion. "This is Ronan Hale, my head of security. May we step inside?" "The hallway's fine." Clara kept her voice steady, professional. The corridor's single bulb cast harsh shadows, making the men look more imposing. "Fair enough." Massimo nodded, respecting the boundary. "I'll be direct. What you did for Poppy today, I haven't heard her speak in months. Not since—" He paused, something raw flickering across his features. "You have a gift. I'd like to offer you a position as her live-in aide." Clara's mind raced. Live-in meant leaving the boarding house, leaving Tommy alone, but the promise of steady work, of escaping the endless cycle of cleaning jobs. "I have other commitments. Full salary, medical coverage, and transportation to maintain your current cleaning positions if you wish to keep them." Massimo's dark eyes held hers. "Everything legitimate, above board. You'd have your own room, complete privacy when off duty." Movement behind Ronan drew Clara's attention. Poppy peeked around his leg, her small face lighting up at the sight of Clara. The child's fingers reached out, catching the hem of Clara's worn coat. Clara's heart squeezed. She thought of Eric's debts, the crushing weight of them, the way they'd followed her even after his disappearance. Working for a man like Massimo could either be salvation or a deeper trap. 1 week, she found herself saying. A trial period with conditions. Something like respect crossed Massimo's face. "Name them." "No illegal activities. I won't be drawn into anything criminal." Clara met his gaze steadily. "I keep my own room key, and after the week, if either of us decides it's not working, I leave, no consequences." Agreed. Massimo didn't hesitate. We can draw up the paperwork now if you'd like to pack a bag. Tommy appeared in their doorway, worry etched on his young face. Clara turned to him, speaking low. It's okay. Remember Mrs. Chen said she'd look in on you. This could help us catch up on everything. The debt? Tommy whispered. Clara nodded. Maybe. I'll call you tomorrow. First thing. It took less than 15 minutes to pack essentials into her old duffel bag. Basic toiletries, 3 changes of clothes, her mother's worn photo album. The paperwork was equally swift. Clear terms, legitimate letterhead. Nothing hidden in fine print. As they descended the boarding house's creaky stairs, Poppy's small hand found Clara's, the child's grip warm and trusting. Outside, the night had grown colder. The SUV waited at the curb, its engine purring quietly. A dark sedan rolled past, parking half a block down. Clara's spine stiffened, recognizing it from earlier. Ronan touched his earpiece, speaking in low tones as he opened the SUV's door for them. Massimo helped Poppy into her car seat, then turned to Clara. After you! His gesture was courteous, but she felt the weight of the decision settling around her shoulders as she climbed in. The vehicle pulled smoothly away from the curb. Through the tinted windows, Clara watched the sedan fall into position behind them, maintaining a precise distance for 3 blocks before peeling off down a side street, vanishing into the night's shadows. The SUV's interior was warm. Leather seats soft against her back. Poppy dozed beside her, small fingers still curled around Clara's hand. In the front seat, Ronan maintained a quiet stream of communications through his mic, while Massimo checked his phone, his presence both commanding and carefully contained. Clara watched her familiar neighborhood slide past, each street corner marking another step away from the life she knew. The medical coverage alone could help with Tommy's glasses, maybe even the dental work he needed. A week. She could manage anything for a week. The tap-tap-pause rhythm played through her mind, steadying her nerves. Poppy stirred in her sleep, murmuring something too soft to catch. Clara squeezed her tiny hand gently, wondering what other words waited to be unlocked, what price she might pay for being the one to find them. The SUV wound through iron gates that seemed to pierce the night sky, following a long drive flanked by ancient oaks. Clara's breath caught as the DeAngelis estate emerged, a stunning fusion of marble and glass that glowed like a lighthouse against the darkness. The mansion's windows reflected the security lights, creating an otherworldly shimmer. Welcome home, Massimo said softly to Poppy, who had stirred from her sleep. Ronan led them through imposing double doors into a foyer where their footsteps echoed on Italian marble. The space felt cavernous, every surface gleaming with wealth that made Clara's worn duffel bag seem even shabbier. But it was the silence that struck her most, a heavy quiet that seemed to weigh on Poppy's small shoulders. Your suite, Ronan announced, opening a door on the second floor. Clara stepped into a bright room that defied the mansion's grandeur with its cozy simplicity. A plush queen bed occupied one wall, while a small sitting area faced French doors that would open to a private balcony. Through the windows, she glimpsed a meticulously maintained garden below. The bathroom's through there, Ronan indicated a door. And this. He pressed a panel beside the bed, revealing a hidden stairwell. Leads to the safe room. You'll need to memorize the emergency protocols. The next hour passed in a blur of paperwork. Clara's hand cramped as she signed NDAs and house rules that outlined everything from visitor restrictions to detailed security procedures. The curfew seemed reasonable. Indoor by 9 p.m. unless escorted. The emergency protocols were another matter entirely, with multiple evacuation routes and contingency plans that made her wonder what exactly she'd walked into. Standard procedure, Massimo assured her, but his eyes held something darker. As evening deepened, Clara shadowed Poppy's bedtime routine. The child's nanny, an elderly woman named Mrs. Burke, demonstrated the careful choreography required. Bathwater at exactly the right temperature, pajamas laid out in precise order, story time in the window seat rather than the bed. She doesn't like sudden changes, Mrs. Burke explained in hushed tones. And loud noises, they shut her down completely. Clara nodded, already adapting her approach. She introduced new elements to their tap-tap-pause game, incorporating sensory anchors from Poppy's environment. Feel this, she whispered, guiding Poppy's hand to a smooth river stone on her nightstand. Warm stone. Tap-tap-pause. And here, touching a silk leaf on a potted plant. Soft leaf. Tap-tap-pause. Poppy's fingers traced the patterns, her breathing settling into a calmer rhythm. Clara was building a vocabulary of safety, one gentle touch at a time. The house grew quieter as staff retired for the night. Clara used the time to unpack her meager belongings, arrange her toiletries, and send a quick text to Tommy. Safe, all good, sleep well. Near midnight, just as she was drifting off, sharp cracks split the silence. Gunshots, close enough to make the windows rattle. Clara's heart leaped into her throat as her door burst open. Ronan filled the frame, his expression grim. Safe room. Now. Clara didn't hesitate. She sprinted to Poppy's room, finding Massimo already there, scooping up his daughter. Together they descended the hidden stairwell, emerging into a steel-reinforced chamber bathed in soft blue emergency lighting. The safe room was a stark contrast to the luxury above. Utilitarian bunks, monitors displaying security feeds, and enough supplies to last weeks. Poppy trembled in her father's arms, her face buried against his neck. Clara acted on instinct, beginning their rhythm game. Tap, tap, pause on the steel wall. The familiar pattern drew Poppy's attention. Clara added the whisper song they'd created earlier, her voice barely audible above the hum of air filtration. Warm stone, she murmured. Tap, tap, pause. Soft leaf. Tap, tap, pause. Gradually, Poppy lifted her head. She reached for Clara, who took her without breaking rhythm. Against her shoulder, so quiet she almost missed it, Poppy whispered, It's okay. 10 minutes stretched like taffy before Ronan's voice crackled through the intercom. All clear, sir. Massimo's jaw was set like iron as they emerged. His eyes held a cold fury that made Clara shiver. There will be increased security measures, he stated, his tone brooking no argument. And Clara, you don't leave the grounds without escort, not for the duration of your trial period. The reality of her situation settled over her like a heavy cloak. This wasn't just a job. She'd stepped into a world where violence lurked at the edges, where fear was as routine as breakfast. The boarding house's broken heating and shared bathrooms suddenly seemed peaceful in comparison. But when she looked at Poppy, now drowsy against her shoulder, Clara couldn't regret her choice. Should we plan a garden treasure hunt for tomorrow? She suggested softly. After breakfast, we could make this place feel more like home. Poppy nodded, her small hand finding Clara's larger one. Promise? Promise! Clara met Massimo's gaze over his daughter's head, seeing the mixture of gratitude and warning in his dark eyes. She might be trapped here now, but she wasn't powerless. She had something they needed, a way to reach Poppy, to bring light into their fortress of fear. As she tucked Poppy back into bed, Clara hummed their whisper song. Outside, security teams patrolled the perimeter, their footsteps regular as a heartbeat. Inside, in this bubble of warmth and soft lamplight, she focused on building safety, one tap-tap pause at a time. Morning light spilled through the kitchen's high windows, casting long rectangles across marble countertops. Clara measured flour while Poppy perched on a stool, her small legs swinging beneath her pink pajamas. The kitchen smelled of vanilla and possibility. First, we need to make choices, Clara explained, laying out cookie cutters. C, star, heart, or circle. Which one speaks to you? Poppy touched each cutter with deliberate focus, her fingertips leaving tiny impressions in the dusting of flour. Clara waited, matching her breathing to their familiar rhythm. Tap, tap, pause. No pressure, just presence. Star, Poppy whispered, the word falling like a gift between them. No prompting needed. Clara's heart soared, but she kept her voice steady. Excellent choice. Let's start with stars. They worked together, Clara guiding Poppy's hands through the motions of rolling dough. The kitchen filled with warmth as the oven preheated, and the gentle domesticity of the moment almost made Clara forget about last night's gunshots. Footsteps in the doorway made them both look up. Massimo stood there, jacket discarded and sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing corded forearms. His usual sharp edges seemed softer in the morning light. Something smells good, he said, moving closer to inspect their work. Cookies, Poppy answered, her voice small but clear. Massimo froze, joy and disbelief warring on his face. Clara watched him master his reaction, offering only an encouraging smile instead of the overwhelming response he clearly wanted to give. May I help? He asked carefully. Clara handed him a cookie cutter, their fingers brushing. Mind the flour. But it was already too late. White dust had settled on his expensive shirt and across his knuckles. He didn't seem to mind, focusing instead on pressing perfect stars into the dough while Poppy directed their placement. The kitchen grew warmer, and not just from the oven. Clara found herself hyper-aware of Massimo's presence. the way he moved with controlled grace even in this domestic setting. When they both reached for the cooling rack, the space between them charged with electricity. His eyes met hers, dark and intent. The air thickened as he leaned closer, flour-dusted fingers almost brushing her cheek. For a heartbeat, Clara wanted to let it happen, to taste the possibility that had been simmering since that first moment in the park. Instead, she took a deliberate step back. "We should check the second." "Batch," she said quietly, remembering her carefully negotiated boundaries. This was about Poppy, about creating safety. Complications would only endanger that. Massimo's expression flickered with understanding and something like respect. He nodded once, returning his attention to his daughter. They finished baking in companionable focus, but the morning's peace shattered when Ronan appeared in the doorway, his face grave. "Sir, we need to talk." In Massimo's study, with Poppy safely occupied by Mrs. Burke, Ronan laid out surveillance photos. The dark sedan that had followed Clara appeared in several shots, along with its owner, Tomas Grimaldi, a rival boss with a reputation for creative cruelty. "He's been watching the playground," Ronan explained, his voice clipped. "Recording Poppy's progress. We've confirmed multiple cameras and at least 2 surveillance teams." Massimo's hands flattened on his desk. "The shipping seizure." "He's looking for leverage," Ronan confirmed. "The child would be..." He glanced at Clara apologetically. "A valuable pressure point." Clara's stomach clenched as pieces clicked into place. The lingering car, the test shots, the suffocating security. This wasn't just about protection. It was about prevention. The day passed in a haze of heightened awareness. Clara maintained routine for Poppy's sake, but her skin prickled at every shadow. They had their garden treasure hunt as promised, but only after Ronan's team swept the grounds twice. Evening brought story time. Poppy curled against Clara's side as they read about brave knights and clever princesses. The child's breathing had just evened into sleep when Clara noticed something by her door. A phone, slim and black, slid under the gap. Back in her room, she found a single text message waiting. "Your brother's debt could disappear. Just document the miracle and leave a gate unlatched. Think about Eric's future." Ice flooded Clara's veins. They knew about Eric, about the debt that had been slowly drowning them both. The phone felt like a viper in her hands. She removed the battery without hesitation and brought everything to Ronan, explaining in low tones. He accepted the evidence with a grim nod, but the damage was done. The message burrowed under her skin like a splinter, a reminder that her past could still be weaponized. Now, at 11:30 p.m., Clara sat in bed, watching shadows climb her walls. The house creaked and settled around her, security teams making their rounds outside. Her mind spun with the day's contrasts, warm cookies and cold threats, Poppy's whispered progress and Tomas's watching cameras, the almost kiss and the phone's poisonous promise. She pressed her palm against the cool window glass, grounding herself in its solidity. The moon hung low over the garden where they'd hunted treasure just hours ago, transforming familiar shapes into looming shadows. No, she thought fiercely. She would not be the weak link in Poppy's chain of safety. She would not let her brother's mistakes become a tool to hurt this child who was finally finding her voice again. Whatever Thomas offered, whatever pressure he applied, she would not break this fragile trust. Clara touched the wall, tapping out their rhythm. Tap, tap, pause. A promise in Morse code. She would be worthy of Poppy's whispered words, of Massimo's careful respect, of her own hard-won integrity. The shadows continued their slow dance across her ceiling as Clara sat awake, back straight, shoulders set. She would not sleep tonight, but she would not waver either. Morning dew sparkled on the manicured lawn as Clara knelt in the garden, tucking smooth river stones and carefully selected leaves into hidden spots. She'd kept the stones in her pocket since dawn, letting her body heat warm them. Each hiding place was chosen with purpose, low enough for small hands, visible enough to prevent frustration. Poppy emerged from breakfast in a pale blue dress, her dark curls caught back with clips that matched her father's eyes. Clara smiled, holding out her hand. "Ready for our treasure hunt?" The child's fingers were cool and tiny against her palm. They started down the stone path, Clara humming their familiar rhythm. Tap, tap, pause, each step measured and safe. "First treasure is hiding where flowers sleep," Clara whispered, guiding Poppy toward a dormant flower bed. The child's movements were careful but eager as she parted winter-dry stems. "Found it!" Poppy's whisper was barely audible, but her eyes lit up as she cradled the warm stone. "What do you feel?" Clara asked, keeping her voice soft and steady. Poppy's fingers traced the smooth surface. Stone is warm, she managed, the words coming slow but clear. They continued through the garden, each discovery paired with touch and words. A velvet-soft leaf nestled behind a bench earned them leaf is soft. A shell, hidden near the fountain, brought shell feels smooth. Near the rose arbor, Poppy's laugh startled them both, high and bright like wind chimes, pure surprise at finding a feather tucked among the thorns. The sound seemed to hang in the crisp air, precious as frost. After lunch, while Mrs. Burke supervised Poppy's art time, Massimo called Clara to his office. The heavy curtains were drawn part way, casting the room in filtered light that caught dust motes dancing above his desk. He stood at the window, shoulders rigid beneath his tailored suit. "You deserve to know why," he said without turning. "Why she stopped speaking, why the security, all of it." Clara settled into a leather chair, noting how his fingers pressed against the windowsill until the knuckles went white. "The car bomb was meant for me." His voice was flat, controlled. "Anna, Poppy's mother, she was dropping off some papers I'd forgotten. Wrong place, wrong time, my time." He turned finally, his face carved from shadow. Poppy saw everything. The fire, the glass, her mother. He moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and withdrew a clear evidence bag. Inside was a charred scrap of paper, edges blackened and curled. A child's drawing, mostly destroyed except for one detail. A man's wrist bearing what looked like a wolf tattoo, circled frantically in red crayon. "She drew this the morning before," Massimo said quietly. "She'd seen someone watching her at school. Tried to tell us, but we thought..." He pressed his palms flat against the desk. "We thought it was just a drawing." Thunder rolled outside, a low warning growl. The office lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. "The silver wolf is Grimaldi's mark," he continued. "His people wear it, proof he was behind it, but not enough for war, not enough for justice." His jaw tightened. "And Poppy, my bright chattering girl, she just stopped, like a light switching off." The storm built through dinner, rain lashing the windows. When the power finally failed around 9, the house fell into shadow, pierced by security's flashlight beams and the warm glow of emergency candles. Clara found Massimo in the hallway outside Poppy's room, checking the backup generators. Candlelight played across his features, softening the hard edges of day into something almost vulnerable. She wasn't sure who moved first. The kiss began soft as a whisper, tentative as Poppy's new words. His hands framed her face with impossible gentleness, as if she might shatter like that long-ago windshield. The thunder crashed closer, and the kiss deepened. His fingers tangled in her hair as she pressed closer, tasting warmth and need, and barely leashed control. For a moment, she let herself get lost in it, in the heat of his body, and the way he shuddered when she scraped her nails lightly along his nape. But then he tried to turn them, to press her against the wall, and she felt the shift from passion to possession. Clara broke away, breathing hard. "I need honesty," she whispered, holding his gaze. "Not control, not ownership. Truth." Massimo's hand slid to her shoulders, then dropped away. He nodded once, respect warming his eyes. "Truth," he agreed roughly. The storm began to ease around 11, rain softening to a gentle patter against the windows. Emergency lights hummed as systems reset themselves, bringing the house back to life one circuit at a time. Clara checked on Poppy one last time before bed. The child slept peacefully, one hand curled around a warm stone from their morning hunt, the other reaching toward the gentle blue glow of her seashell nightlight. On her bedside table lay Tomorrow's Promise, a new game Clara had designed, matching textures to words to keep building their bridge back to speech. In the quiet, Clara watched Poppy's chest rise and fall, each breath steady and sure, like their rhythm. Tap, tap, pause, like the careful steps they'd taken through the garden, like the slow rebuild of trust between a father and daughter shattered by loss. The house settled around them, security systems rebooting with soft electronic chirps. Outside, guards resumed their patrols, shoes squeaking on wet pavement. But here, in this bubble of blue light and childhood dreams, peace held steady as a heartbeat. The house phone rang at 5:47 a.m., jolting Clara from sleep. Her stomach dropped when she heard Eric's voice, thin and breathless. "They found me, Clara. Grimaldi's guys." His words tumbled out in panicked bursts. "They know everything about you, the DeAngelis kid, all of it." Clara pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching dawn creep over the grounds. "What do they want?" They said, Eric's voice cracked. Leave a service gate unlocked for their camera crew. Keep the kid talking on schedule. If you don't, he swallowed hard. They'll make my debt permanent. Said they'd start with my knees. Eric, listen to me. Please, Clara, I know it's wrong, but I don't know what else to do. Her hand tightened on the phone. I won't help hurt a child, not even for you. She hung up and pressed her palms against her eyes, allowing herself exactly 30 seconds to shake. Then she straightened her spine and went to find Massimo. He was already in his office with Ronan, both men looking up sharply when she entered. Clara didn't waste time. Grimaldi's men found my brother. She kept her voice steady. They want me to let in a camera team. Keep Poppy on display. She met Massimo's darkening gaze. I refused. Where is he? Massimo's question was soft, dangerous. Clara's heart squeezed. I can't tell you that. Not yet. She saw his jaw tighten and hurried on. Eric made mistakes, gambling debts, courier work for their crew. But he's not malicious, just stupid. Please don't. She couldn't finish the sentence. You think I'll kill him? It wasn't a question. I think you're capable of it. She lifted her chin. And I need to protect my family, too. Something shifted in Massimo's expression. Respect, maybe. Understanding. He nodded once to Ronan, who began typing rapidly on his tablet. Immediate protocol changes, Ronan announced. Perimeter drones active 24/7. Double patrols with thermal imaging. No deliveries without triple verification. We'll create a schedule for Poppy, Clara added. Like school, structured speech practice times, indoor and outdoor activities. Routine helps her feel safe. Massimo studied her. You're not running. No. She met his gaze steadily. I made promises. To you, to her. The morning unfolded according to their new plan. Clara helped Poppy with breakfast, maintaining their tap-tap-pause rhythm as the child whispered her way through choosing fruit and cereal. Security teams swept the grounds in overlapping patterns while drones hummed overhead. Just after 2 o'clock, during their scheduled garden time, Clara spotted it, a glint of glass in the trees beyond the fence. Her heart thundered, but she kept her voice calm. Poppy, sweetheart, let's play our inside game now. The child tensed, picking up on something, in Clara's tone. We're going to walk very slowly, Clara continued, taking Poppy's small hand. You can tell me what you see, just like our treasure hunt. One step at a time. Poppy's fingers tightened. Stone path, she whispered. That's right. Feel how solid it is under your feet. Step by careful step, they made their way inside. Clara narrated each movement, letting Poppy set the pace, maintaining their bubble of control, even as her skin crawled with the weight of watching eyes. Ronan met them at the door, expression grim. He'd seen the camera, too. That evening, after Poppy was asleep, Massimo found Clara in the library. She sat in the window seat, watching guards patrol with flashlights that cut through gathering dark. I'll find him, Massimo said quietly. The man with the silver wolf. I'll end this. Clara turned to face him. And Eric? If he cooperates, helps us trace their network. He paused. I'll clear his debt. Get him out of the city. Fresh start. Thank you. She touched his wrist lightly. I won't betray your trust. Not for anyone. I know. His fingers caught hers, squeezed once. No opening doors to devils. Not even for family, she agreed. They stayed there a moment, connected by that simple touch, while night settled over the grounds. At 10:15, both their phones buzzed with Ronan's message. Perimeter, clear, Brenner Cole, arriving at dawn for access audit. Clara knew she should feel relief. Instead, she felt the noose tightening, Grimaldi's camera lens, Eric's fear, the weight of choices that could destroy everything. But when she looked at Massimo, saw the quiet strength in his stance and the fierce protection in his eyes, she knew she'd chosen right. She would not be the weak link in Poppy's chain of safety. She would not betray the trust building between her and Massimo. And somehow she would find a way to save her brother without sacrificing her soul in the process. The night pressed against the windows, but inside, the house hummed with layers of security. Electronic eyes, armed men, reinforced walls. Clara touched the warm stone in her pocket, the one Poppy had given her that morning. Safe, the child had whispered, pressing it into her palm. Safe was relative in this world of shadows and silver wolves. But they would make their own safety, built on truth and trust instead of fear. One word, one step, one choice at a time. Dawn painted the kitchen windows in watercolor grays. Clara followed the scent of coffee, finding Massimo at the counter, his shirt sleeves already rolled to his elbows despite the early hour. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He'd been up all night. "We found something," he said without preamble, sliding a steaming mug toward her. "A mechanic?" One of Grimaldi's lower-level guys. Clara wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, waiting. He talked about an enforcer, right-hand man who always wears his watch over a specific tattoo. Massimo's voice went dangerously soft. "A silver. Wolf. Right wrist." The mug trembled in Clara's grip. Coffee sloshed, nearly burning her fingers, but she barely noticed. Memory crashed over her. A cold night, months ago, taking out trash behind the cafe. A man stepping from shadows, blocking her path. "I've seen him," she whispered. Massimo went absolutely still. Even his breathing seemed to pause. "It was maybe 4 months ago, behind my old job at Rosie's Cafe." She set the mug down before she could drop it. He asked about my schedule, my walking routes. Seemed too interested. I switched jobs the next week. "Why didn't you report it?" "To who? The police?" She gave a bitter laugh. "I was a cleaning lady being harassed. They wouldn't have cared." Massimo's expression darkened. He moved closer, not quite touching her, but near enough she could feel his heat. "You'll sit with our sketch artist. Today." It wasn't a request. Clara nodded. The morning passed in a blur of routine. Breakfast with Poppy, speech exercises, a game of matching colors to emotions that had the child whispering, "Yellow is happy," while pointing to her sundress. By afternoon, Clara sat in the sunroom with a serious-faced woman who asked careful questions about facial features while her pencil flew across paper. Poppy sprawled nearby on a thick rug, building an elaborate castle from wooden blocks. "Tall tower," she murmured. "Smooth blocks. Blue roof." Clara let her daughter's quiet commentary anchor her as she described the man who'd cornered her. Heavy brows, crooked nose like it had been broken, thin lips that smiled without warmth. The artist's skilled hands brought him to life in shades of graphite. "The eyes were closer together," Clara said. "And there was a scar. Here." She touched her own chin. The pencil scratched, adjusting details. Poppy's blocks clattered softly. "Round window," the child whispered. "For looking out." When the sketch was done, Clara's hands shook. The face on the page seemed to stare back at her, that same cold interest she remembered from the alley. Massimo studied it over her shoulder, his presence solid and reassuring. "When I find him," he said later that evening, voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, "there will be no trial." They stood in his study, the sketch spread on his desk between them. Outside, security lights cut clean lines through gathering dusk. Clara met his gaze steadily. "Then let me be sure before you end a man." Something sparked in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition of how carefully she weighed the power of accusation. He moved closer, drawn by the shared understanding between them. This was different than their kiss during the storm. That had been heat and impulse, thunder drowning thought. This was deliberate, the slow slide of his hand along her jaw, the careful tilt of her chin up to meet him. His lips brushed hers once, twice, testing. When she pressed closer, his other hand found her waist, pulling her against him. Clara felt the coiled strength in him, the lethal capability held in careful check. But his touch remained gentle, almost reverent. She wound her arms around his neck, rising on tiptoe to deepen the kiss. His grunt of approval rumbled through her. A quiet knock broke them apart. Ronan stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, expression professionally neutral. "Sir, the evening security brief?" Massimo stepped back, straightening his collar. Clara touched her lips, still tingling. 5 minutes, she said softly. "I promised Poppy another chapter before bed." He caught her hand as she passed, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture felt both courtly and possessive. "We'll continue this discussion later." The night settled warm around them as they gathered on the back terrace after Poppy's story. String lights twinkled overhead like earthbound stars, casting soft shadows across the stone patio. The child sat between them on a cushioned bench, drowsy but fighting sleep. "Can we go to the lake tomorrow?" she asked, voice small but clear. "After lunch?" Clara glanced at Ronan, who stood at parade rest near the door. "That depends on whether the security team thinks it's safe, sweetheart." "I want to see ducks," Poppy insisted. "And skip rocks." Ronan consulted his tablet, fingers flying. After a moment, he gave a single sharp nod. Route can be secured. We'll need 3 vehicles, pre-positioned teams. No more than 90 minutes on site. Then yes, Clara told Poppy, smoothing her hair. Tomorrow after lunch, if you practice your morning words. The child beamed, snuggling closer. Above them, the string lights swayed in a gentle breeze, casting shifting patterns across the terrace. Guard teams moved in measured patterns through the darkness beyond, their rhythmic sweeps as regular as waves against a shore. Clara caught Massimo watching them, his expression soft in ways that made her heart squeeze. This strange new family they were building, fragile as spun sugar, strong as steel cable, felt more real with each passing day, more worth protecting. Poppy's breathing deepened into sleep. Tomorrow would bring lake water and duck calls, carefully orchestrated safety measures, and the constant vigilance that had become their normal. But for now, there was just this: warm lights, cool air, and the precious weight of trust in her arms. Sunlight dappled the lake's surface as their small convoy wound down the private road. Clara sat in the back of the lead SUV with Poppy, watching the child's fingers trace patterns on the tinted window. Massimo rode up front, his shoulders relaxed but alert as Ronan navigated the curved drive. The second vehicle followed at a precise distance, carrying a security detail and medical supplies. Standard protocol, Clara had learned. For any outing beyond the estate walls, the preparation felt both excessive and necessary, like so much of their world now. They parked in a graveled area sheltered by old growth pines. The lake stretched. Before them, crystal clear and still, except for gentle ripples catching the early afternoon light. Clara helped Poppy from the car, while security swept the perimeter, establishing sightlines and communication posts with practiced efficiency. "Water's sparkly," Poppy whispered, gripping Clara's hand. "It is," Clara agreed. "The sun makes it dance." They spread a blanket near the shore, well within the security zone but far enough from the cars to feel almost normal. Massimo set down a wicker basket containing sandwiches, fruit, and bottles of sparkling water. Simple fare that wouldn't spoil in the warmth. Poppy knelt at the water's edge, letting tiny waves lap at her fingers. "It's cold," she announced, then giggled, a bright surprise sound that made both adults freeze. "Sprinkles," she continued, pointing at where sunlight scattered across the surface. "The light makes sprinkles on the water." Clara glanced at Massimo and caught her breath. He was staring at her with an expression of such raw gratitude it made her chest ache. In that moment, he wasn't the feared Mafia boss or the careful strategist. He was simply a father watching his daughter bloom back to life. They spent the afternoon skipping stones and collecting smooth pebbles. Poppy's voice grew stronger with each discovery. "This one's flat. Look at the stripy one. Can we save the white rocks?" Clara taught her to make leaf boats, showing her how to choose the biggest maple leaves and fold up their edges. They launched a small fleet, watching them drift on the gentle current while Poppy provided commentary on their imaginary voyages. Massimo joined them at the water's edge, rolling up his sleeves to demonstrate proper stone-skipping technique. His hands, capable of such violence, moved with exaggerated gentleness as he guided Poppy's small fingers around a perfect skipping stone. As the sun began to set, painting the lake in amber and rose, they packed up their impromptu picnic. Poppy fell asleep on the drive home, her pockets full of treasure rocks and her face peaceful in the gathering dusk. Later, after tucking Poppy into bed, Clara returned to her room to find Massimo waiting. The air between them felt charged, weighted with everything unsaid during their careful afternoon. He crossed to her in 2 long strides, cupping her face in his hands. "You gave her voice back," he murmured. "You gave her joy." "We did it together," Clara whispered, but he was already kissing her, deep and desperate and achingly tender. They undressed each other slowly, reverently. His scars told stories of survival. Her hands mapped promises across his skin. When he laid her back against the cool sheets, his touch was both passionate and protective, claiming and cherishing in equal measure. "No more lies," she gasped as he moved above her. "No matter what comes." "Truth between us," he agreed, voice rough. "Always." They made love with a hunger that surprised them both, as if they'd been starving for this connection without realizing it. His strength cradled her, her softness unmade him. When they finally lay spent and tangled in the sheets, the world felt both simpler and more complex than before. A quiet knock interrupted their afterglow. Ronan's voice came through the door, pitched low but urgent. "Sir, we've detected an unauthorized signal." Massimo pressed a kiss to Clara's shoulder before rising to dress. She pulled on a robe, knowing this couldn't wait until morning. Ronan's tablet displayed a cascade of data. Someone had piggybacked their estate Wi-Fi, using it to transmit coded messages. The implications were clear. They had an internal leak. "Brenner's starting a full audit," Ronan reported. "Staff devices, server logs, everything. We'll find the source." Massimo's jaw tightened, but his hand remained gentle where it rested at Clara's waist. "Double the night patrols. I want eyes on every corner until we know more." After Ronan left, they returned to bed, but sleep proved elusive. Clara lay with her head on Massimo's chest, fingers tracing his steady heartbeat, while boots clicked softly past her door, guards maintaining their endless vigil. She thought about truth and trust, about the power of words spoken and unspoken, about how love could be both armor and vulnerability. The truth couldn't hurt them if they kept saying it out loud, she told herself. They just had to keep choosing honesty over fear. Massimo's arms tightened around her, as if reading her thoughts. Outside, the patrol pattern continued. Click, pause, click, like a heartbeat, like a promise, like the tap-tap pause that had started everything. The clock on her nightstand blinked 1:58 a.m. In a few hours, Brenner would begin unraveling the digital threads of betrayal. But for now, there was just this: warm skin, shared breath, and the quiet certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. Clara stared at the screen Brenner had set up in Massimo's office, her stomach turning to ice as line after line of data scrolled past. The timestamps, the routing patterns, the ghosted credentials, all of it painted a damning picture with her digital fingerprints all over it. "The signature matches protocols from your previous burner phone," Brenner explained, his voice clinically detached as he gestured to highlighted segments. "Same relay points, same timing gaps. Someone's gone to considerable effort to make this look like your work." Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, throwing harsh shadows across Massimo's desk. He stood with his hands braced on the polished surface, shoulders rigid as he absorbed the implications. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken accusations. "I would never," Clara said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Not about Poppy, not about any of this." Ronan leaned against the doorframe, his expression carefully neutral. "The logs are comprehensive, but they could be manipulated. We should complete the full analysis before drawing conclusions." "You hid your brother's location from me," Massimo said quietly, finally meeting her eyes. The hurt there was worse than anger would have been. "What else have you hidden?" "I hid Eric because I was afraid for him," Clara admitted. "Because I've seen what happens to people who cross you, but I swear on my life, I haven't sent a single word about Poppy to anyone. She matters too much." Through the open door, they could hear Poppy in the hallway practicing her new words with her tutor. Her voice carried clearly. "The butterfly is orange. The sky is blue." Each sentence was a reminder of how far they'd come, how much trust had been built. Massimo's gaze kept drifting toward those sounds, his jaw tightening. Clara recognized the war in his expression, the father's need to protect warring with the man's desire to believe. "Until we verify these logs completely, we need to contain potential damage," he finally said. "You'll stay in the guest suite, full access to your room, bathroom, and the attached sitting area. Meals will be brought to you." "You're locking me up," Clara's voice cracked slightly. "I'm keeping you safe," Massimo countered, but his eyes betrayed the cost of this decision. "If someone is trying to frame you, they might try to harm you next. This is protection, not punishment." "It feels like punishment," she whispered. Brenner gathered his tablets, face impassive. "I'll continue analyzing the data streams. There may be more to uncover." Ronan stepped forward to escort her upstairs. Clara walked past Massimo without touching him, though every cell in her body ached to reach out, to make him understand. The distance between them felt like miles already. The guest suite was beautiful, all cream and gold with tall windows overlooking the gardens. But it might as well have been a cell. Clara spent the afternoon pacing, watching the shadows lengthen across the floor. She could hear distant footsteps in the hallway, the normal rhythm of the household continuing without her. Around dinner time, there was a soft scratching at her door. Before the guard outside could react, Poppy had slipped through with a piece of paper clutched in her hands. "I made this," she said, holding out her drawing. 3 stick figures stood hand in hand under a bright crayon sun, a tall one, a medium one, and a small one, a family. Clara knelt down, her throat tight. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." "Don't leave," Poppy whispered, her small fingers curling into Clara's sleeve. "Please don't go away." Before Clara could respond, Ronan appeared in the doorway. His expression was sympathetic but firm. "Come on, little miss, time for bed." Poppy hugged Clara fiercely before allowing herself to be led away. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Clara alone with the drawing and her thoughts. She taped the picture to her window where the last rays of sunset illuminated the crayon colors. Outside, the garden grew darker as security lights clicked on, creating pools of harsh brightness against the gathering night. Hours passed. Clara couldn't sleep. She sat in the window seat, watching the guards patrol below, their movements precise and practiced. The house settled into its nighttime rhythm of creaking wood and humming systems. Just before midnight, footsteps approached her door. She recognized Brenner's measured stride before he knocked. "Come in," she called softly. He entered with a tablet under his arm, his usual analytical expression tinged with something that might have been satisfaction. "I found something interesting in the deeper network architecture. There's a second tunnel, hidden under the first. Much more sophisticated work. It might take until morning to fully decode, but the preliminary patterns suggest this could clear your involvement completely." Clara exhaled slowly, hope warring with exhaustion. "Thank you for looking deeper." "I follow the evidence," Brenner replied simply. "The truth leaves traces if you know where to look." He paused at the door. "Try to rest. Tomorrow may bring clarity." Left alone again, Clara touched the glass pane, cool against her fingertips. Somewhere in this house, Massimo was probably still awake too, caught between duty and doubt. Somewhere, Poppy slept with her new words, safe in her dreams. And somewhere in the estate's digital maze, the real truth waited to be uncovered. The clock ticked toward midnight, each second both too fast and too slow. Clara stayed at the window, watching the guards below trace their endless patterns through pools of light and shadow, waiting for morning to prove what her heart already knew. That love and loyalty couldn't be spoofed or counterfeited, no matter how clever the code. The pale winter sun had barely crested the horizon when Ronan knocked on Clara's door. "Time to move! Bring only essentials." In the garage, 3 identical black SUVs idled. Clara caught glimpses of tactical gear and weapon handles as security teams did final checks. The air smelled of exhaust and gun oil. Massimo stood by the lead vehicle, speaking quietly with Brenner. His expression was carved from stone, but his eyes softened briefly when they met Clara's. "We're moving you to a secure location until we finish the network trace," Ronan explained, leading her to the middle SUV. "Standard convoy formation. Any threats, you stay down and let us handle it." Clara nodded, throat tight. Through the tinted windows, she watched Poppy being settled into the rear vehicle, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. The child caught her eye and waved, managing a small, "Bye-bye!" that made Clara's heart crack. The convoy rolled out smoothly, following the tree-lined drive to the main gate. Clara counted her breaths, trying to steady her nerves. They'd made it half a mile when everything went wrong. Multiple explosions rocked the street. White smoke billowed across the road as spike strips shredded their tires. The SUV skidded, metal screaming against pavement. Clara's head snapped forward, then back against the seat. Through the chaos came the sound of shattering glass and Poppy's terrified scream. Clara fought with her seatbelt as masked figures swarmed the rear vehicle. Gunfire erupted, sharp cracks that made her flinch. "Stay down!" Ronan shouted, but Clara was already moving, scrambling out the far side door. Through gaps in the smoke, she saw a man dragging Poppy toward a waiting van. His sleeve rode up, revealing the silver wolf tattoo she'd described to the sketch artist. The child thrashed in his grip while he shouted into a radio, "Package secured? Move!" Massimo burst from the lead SUV, gun drawn. The look on his face was pure murder. Ronan flanked him, both men firing as they advanced through the smoke. But the kidnappers had planned well. More smoke bombs detonated, thick and choking. The van's engine roared. Clara caught one last glimpse of Poppy's terrified face through the window before the vehicle squealed away, leaving rubber and chaos in its wake. Brenner limped onto the scene, gripping his bleeding arm. "Boss," he called, holding up a tablet. "You need to see this." The footage showed security feeds from inside the estate, perfectly clear despite the supposed network interference. A junior tech named Jace Petrov was caught installing something in an HVAC maintenance panel, a crude radio bridge that had been piggybacking their communications. "He's been feeding Grimaldi intel for weeks," Brenner explained. The spoofed logs pointing to Clara were deliberately planted cover. "Jace is the mole." "Where is he now?" Massimo's voice was deadly quiet. "Gone. Cleared out his workspace an hour ago. Left this." Brenner held up a burner phone with a single text. Thanks for the severance package. Clara stepped forward, her hands shaking but her voice steady. I can help find her. Poppy talks to me, trust me. Whatever you're planning, I need to be there. This isn't your fight, Massimo said, but his tone had shifted. When I find them, there won't be survivors. You should run, far from here. I'm not running. Clara met his gaze. That little girl needs me, and you need someone who can keep her calm when we get her back. For a long moment, Massimo studied her face. Then he gave one sharp nod. Ronan, get medical here for Brenner. Clara with me. They regrouped in the estate's garage, converted now to a war room. A massive map of the city covered one table, weighted with guns and tactical gear. Medics worked on Brenner's arm while teams called in locations and assets. Clara studied the map, her mind racing. Here, she said suddenly, pointing to an abandoned ferry terminal on the river. The acoustics would be perfect. Metal walls, water echo, everything amplified. If they want to scare her silent again, that's where I'd take her. Massimo leaned in, eyes tracking sightlines and access routes. Explain. Sound bounces off water, distorts in empty metal buildings. It would feel huge and scary to a child. Plus, there's only one road in, but multiple water exits. Clara traced the routes with her finger. They'd have escape options, and the noise would keep Poppy terrified. Ronan was already pulling up satellite imagery. Recent activity at the site. Power draws, vehicle movements. She's right, something's happening there. The garage hummed with controlled violence as teams geared up. Clara watched Massimo check his weapons with mechanical precision, his face set in lines that promised retribution. A medic finished wrapping Brenner's arm. Sir, that needs stitches. Later. Brenner joined them at the map, his good hand marking tactical positions. We have incoming reports of Grimaldi's men moving toward the waterfront. Multiple vehicles. Time to move, Ronan announced, distributing earpieces and tactical vests. Clara accepted the gear with steady hands. For Poppy, she would walk into hell itself. The vest was heavy, but her resolve was heavier. Massimo caught her arm as teams loaded into vehicles. His eyes held fury and fear in equal measure. Stay close to Ronan. If I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Clara nodded once. Understood, but we're bringing her home, together. The garage doors rolled open to reveal a steel-gray sky. Engines growled to life as the rescue convoy formed up. Clara took her place in the lead vehicle, thinking of Poppy's drawing, 3 figures hand in hand, a family worth fighting for. The war room transformed into organized chaos as Massimo worked his phone, calling in decade-old debts. His voice stayed controlled, but his eyes blazed. The Colombians owe me. Get me Miguel. Now. Across the garage, Ronan spread tactical layouts across 3 screens, marking entry points in red. Main approach here, he indicated, tapping the ferry terminal's front gate. Secondary by water, coming in under the loading dock. We'll split the team. Brenner hunched over a makeshift communication station, his injured arm held close as he soldered connections. These are clean, he said, testing a handheld radio. Running on an isolated frequency. Grimaldi won't see us coming. Clara stood before a mirror, practicing the movements that had first reached Poppy. Tap, tap, pause on her own arm, matching her breathing to the rhythm. I'm here. Breathe with me. The words had to be perfect, had to cut through terror. The lightweight vest felt strange against her chest, too tight, then not tight enough as she adjusted the straps. She'd never worn body armor before, never imagined she'd need to. 2 hours until high tide, Ronan announced, checking his watch. That's our window. Clara pulled out her phone, scanning Eric's recent texts. The timing suddenly clicked. Look at this, she called, spreading messages across the planning table. Grimaldi's dock deliveries, they all happen at high tide. The wave noise covers their movements. Massimo leaned in, studying the pattern. The sound of water hitting the pilings would mask engines, voices, and terrify a child who's already sound sensitive, Clara finished. They're using the environment against her. Teams geared up around them, black tactical gear, weapons checked and rechecked. Medics packed trauma kits. Someone handed Clara an earpiece, showing her how to adjust the fit. Miguel's men will approach from the north, Massimo confirmed, ending another call. Flanking support only. This is our operation. Brenner tested the radio network, his voice crackling across multiple handsets. Comms check. Channel 7 is command. Channel 3 is tactical. Keep it tight. The sun was setting as they loaded vehicles, painting the sky in shades of blood and steel. Clara felt the weight of the moment pressing down, lives balanced on the edge of the next few hours. Ronan outlined the final approach. Alpha Team creates a distraction at the main gate. Beta team comes in by water, 2 Zodiacs, silent running. We locate the target, extract, and eliminate threats. The target is my daughter, Massimo cut in, voice sharp. Remember that? Clara studied the terminal layout one last time, memorizing escape routes and blind spots. Her hands were steady as she checked her vest straps again. This wasn't about fear anymore. This was about bringing Poppy home. The convoy rolled out under darkening skies, running dark until they reached the staging point. Clara sat in the lead vehicle, watching city lights blur past. Every few minutes, her fingers found the rhythm. Tap, tap, pause. A promise kept in motion. Massimo's phone buzzed. Another update from his network. Grimaldi's men are moving supplies inside. They're settling in for a siege. They won't get the chance, Ronan promised from the driver's seat. At the waterfront staging area, teams split off with practiced efficiency. Clara watched Brenner distribute the clean radios, his wounded arm, now properly bandaged, but still held careful. The sodium lights from the terminal cast yellow pools across the water. Perfect cover for the approaching tide. Perfect cover for rescue. Massimo caught Clara's arm as she moved toward the water team's position. His touch was gentle despite the violence humming under his skin. He pressed his forehead to hers, a warrior's blessing. You speak, he said softly. I bleed. You never break. Clara understood. This was love declared in battle terms, protection promised in blood. She touched his face once, memorizing the feel of him, then turned toward the waiting Zodiac. The water team moved out first, engines silent, oars dipping with practiced care. Clara crouched low, feeling every slap against the pilings vibrate through the hull. Above them, the terminal's lights cast long shadows across the dock. Ronan's voice whispered across the radio. Alpha team in position. The first smoke canisters arced through the air, their soft hiss barely audible over the tide. White clouds began blooming under the harsh lights, and Clara tightened her grip on the boat's edge. Tap, tap, pause. She kept the rhythm in her head, a metronome of purpose. I'm here, sweet girl. Breathe with me. We're coming. The water lapped at the Zodiac's sides, darkness gathering close as they glided toward the shadow of the loading dock. Everything narrowed to this moment. The grip of her vest, the salt air on her tongue, the steady hands of operators around her. Up ahead, shouts began to echo from the terminal's main entrance. The diversion was working. Time to move. The night exploded. Smoke billowed across the terminal like ghostly fingers, turning sodium lights into hazy halos. Somewhere in the city, sirens began their distant wail. The diversion at the main gate had worked. Figures scattered like startled birds, their shadows stretching and warping through the artificial fog. Clara pressed herself against a stack of wooden pallets, heart thundering against her vest. The tide slapped beneath the dock, a steady rhythm that almost, but not quite, masked the sound of boots on metal catwalks above. She counted breaths, waited for the patrol to pass, then slipped forward. That's when she saw her. Poppy was zip-tied to a thick mooring post, her small wrists bound behind her. Even from this distance, Clara could see the child's eyes were huge, reflecting terminal lights like dark pools. But she wasn't crying. She wasn't making a sound. Moving carefully through the shadows, Clara closed the distance. She dropped to her knees beside Poppy, deliberately slow, making sure each movement was visible and controlled. The concrete was rough under her palms. I'm here, she whispered, matching her breathing to the child's rapid pace. Breathe with me. Her fingers found the rope securing Poppy to the post and tapped their familiar pattern. Tap, tap, pause. Again. Again. A lifeline of rhythm in the chaos. Poppy's lips parted. Now, she said, the word clear and strong despite her fear. Then, Daddy. It carried across the dock like a beacon. Gunfire erupted on the far side of the terminal. Clara glimpsed Massimo through the smoke, locked in savage combat with Thomas Grimaldi. Their shadows danced across metal containers, a brutal ballet of fists and knives. Nearby, Ronan moved with clinical precision, dropping 2 guards with non-lethal shots. They crumpled without a sound. Movement flashed above, a figure on the catwalk taking aim. Jace Petrov, the traitor who'd hidden radio bridges in the estate's ventilation system. His gun trained on Clara as she worked to free Poppy. The shot never landed. Brenner appeared like a ghost through the smoke, faster by a heartbeat. The bullet meant for Clara caught him in the shoulder, but he returned fire without hesitation. Petrov's body hit the catwalk with a hollow clang, the betrayer's last expression one of surprise. Clara's fingers finally worked the zip tie loose. She pulled. Poppy close, shielding the child's view of the violence. But a new threat emerged, the enforcer with the silver wolf tattoo, stalking toward them, knife gleaming. She didn't have time to be afraid. Massimo crossed the distance like a force of nature, like a storm given human form. His expression promised death, but he held back just long enough for Clara to study the enforcer's face. "The driver," she confirmed, voice steady, "from the bombing." Massimo's response was swift and final. The enforcer dropped, and the knife clattered across concrete, sliding into dark water with a soft plunk. The aftermath felt surreal. Cordite and salt air mixed with the copper tang of blood. Emergency lights strobed in the distance, but the immediate danger had passed. Bodies lay still or groaning depending on their crimes. Medics moved among the wounded, and tactical teams secured the perimeter. Massimo crossed to Clara and Poppy, his movements careful now, contained. Blood darkened his sleeve, but his eyes were clear. He knelt beside them, one hand gentle on his daughter's hair. "You're mine," he said to Clara, voice rough with emotion. "Not a prisoner. My choice. My devotion." Clara met his gaze steadily. "Choose me in daylight," she answered. "A challenge, a promise, a future." Ronan appeared with a thick blanket which Clara wrapped around Poppy's shoulders. The child's fingers clutched the soft material as teams began their cleanup. Brenner was already coordinating with local contacts, arranging the official story despite his injured shoulder. The drive home was quiet, broken only by the soft hum of tires on pavement and the steady rhythm of breathing. Poppy curled in Clara's lap, safe between her two anchors. Just before sleep claimed her, the child whispered, "It's okay." 3 words that held worlds of meaning, 3 words that proved love could overcome silence, that family could be rebuilt, that even the darkest nights could lead to dawn. Clara stroked Poppy's hair, feeling Massimo's hand find hers in the darkness of the car. Outside, the city rolled past, all its lights and shadows, its dangers and safe harbors. But here, in this moment, there was only the weight of a sleeping child and the warmth of joined hands. The tactical convoy moved through empty streets, each vehicle maintaining precise spacing. In the lead SUV, Ronan kept his eyes on the mirrors while the medic quietly checked Massimo's arm. Radio chatter confirmed clean exits, secured locations, contained threats. Brenner's voice came through, on a private channel, confirming that evidence was being collected and loose ends tied. The consigliere had proved himself twice over, first by taking a bullet, then by ensuring their rescue wouldn't spark wider violence. The estate's gates appeared ahead, solid and reassuring, home ground where cameras swept the perimeter and trusted men walked the walls, where a bright room waited with a seashell nightlight and tomorrow's promise of normal. Rhythms restored. Dawn painted the estate in soft gold as evidence from the ferry raid crystallized into justice. Brenner's team had worked through the night, extracting data from Jace Petrov's devices that mapped Grimaldi's entire child leverage operation. The pieces fell together like dominoes, account trails, meeting locations, compromised officials. By mid-morning, coordinated strikes hit 12 locations across the city. Massimo watched from his office as live feeds showed tactical teams breaching warehouses and safe houses. Grimaldi's lieutenants, caught off guard, surrendered with minimal resistance. The organization that had threatened Poppy crumbled in hours. Clara found Eric waiting in the garden 2 days later. Spring bulbs were just breaking soil, tiny green promises pushing through dark earth. Her brother looked smaller somehow, shoulders curved under the weight of choices and consequences. "I'm sorry," he said, hands deep in his pockets. "For everything." Clara touched a emerging crocus leaf. "I forgive you," she replied carefully. "But I can't keep catching you when you fall. The chaos has to stop." He nodded, understanding the boundary she was setting. "The marshals have a place for me out west. Clean slate, protected witness." He managed a weak smile. "Maybe I'll finally grow up." Their goodbye was quiet, a hug that held both love and limits. As Eric walked away, Clara felt lighter. She had chosen her path forward, and it led back inside, where Poppy waited with picture books and trust. The estate transformed over the next week. Massimo didn't cage his new family in security. Instead, he opened the gates to sunlight. Guards remained vigilant, but stepped back, finding balance between protection and space. Clara maintained Poppy's routine with gentle precision. Structured mornings for speech practice, afternoons rich with play and exploration. "We're going to read in the garden," she would say, or, "Let's count the fish in the pond." Every transition came with words, building bridges across silence. Poppy bloomed under the predictability, her voice growing stronger each day. The playground visit came on a bright afternoon when spring finally felt real. No police tape marked their space this time, no obvious security perimeter. Just discreet men at strategic points, alert but unobtrusive. The same swing set where they'd first met stood empty, waiting. But Poppy chose the bench instead, settling between Clara and Massimo with a picture book about a family of bears. Her small finger traced each word as she read aloud, voice clear and confident. Other children played nearby, their laughter a comfortable backdrop. "The end," Poppy declared, closing the book with satisfaction. Massimo reached into his pocket and produced 3 shells, delicate spirals in cream and pink. "One for each of us," he said, placing them in Poppy's palm. 3 wishes." Poppy studied her shell seriously. "I wish for more stories," she said. Then looked at Clara expectantly. Clara rolled her smooth shell between her fingers. "I wish for ordinary days," she said softly. "Breakfasts and bedtimes and all the quiet moments in between." Massimo held his shell up to the light. "I wish for a home that lasts," he said, then turned to Clara. From his pocket came a small box, and inside, a simple ring caught the afternoon sun. No ostentation, just elegant clarity, like their love. "Marry me," he said. "Let me give you both protection and freedom, danger held at bay, and safety to grow. Let me choose you in daylight, every day, for all our days." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks even as she laughed. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." "Family," Poppy declared firmly, wrapping small arms around them both. That evening, they spread blankets on the estate's main lawn. The spring air held just enough chill to make shared warmth welcome. Guards maintained their distance, present but unobtrusive, while Poppy arranged a picnic with careful precision. Clara leaned back against Massimo's chest, his hand steady on her spine. The ring caught golden light when she reached for a strawberry. Nearby, Poppy named clouds with her newfound voice: rabbit, dragon, castle, each word a victory. They had built something rare here, a love that acknowledged darkness while choosing light, protection that enabled freedom rather than constraining it. The danger wasn't gone, it never would be in their world, but they had found their balance. Massimo pressed a kiss to Clara's temple. "Thank you," he murmured, "for teaching us both how to speak again." "Thank you for learning to listen," she replied, watching Poppy arrange cookies in careful patterns. The lawn stretched green around them, the estate solid at their backs. Guards paced the perimeter, necessary shadows in their sunlit world. But here in this moment, they were simply a family having a picnic, marking the start of their forever with small celebrations. Poppy's clear voice, naming flowers, Clara's ring catching light, Massimo's quiet certainty as he held them both. This was their version of happily ever after, not a fairy tale ending that ignored reality, but a careful balance of love and vigilance, freedom and protection, ordinary joys and extraordinary safeguards. They had built their fortress not with walls but with trust, not with silence but with words, not with force but with choice.